Hello, good morning, and welcome. It's Monday, November the 10th. Happy birthday, Ed Conway. Like millions this weekend, I caught up with the final episodes of Celebrity Traitors. And as I get back to work this morning, it turns out that was a busman's holiday from Westminster, as allegations of true plots, fake plots, false trails are all on the agenda in SW1. Today we ask, who are the faithful to Keir Starmer and who are the traitors? And will he know until it's too late? My name is Sam Coates of Sky News.
And trust me, I'm Anne McElvoy from Politico. It's the final day of mini recess, which was bookended with the row over an accidental prisoner release and Remembrance Sunday. But whizzing to the top of the news agenda last night, the abrupt twofer departures of the BBC Director General, Tim Davie, and the CEO of News and Current Affairs, Deborah Turness. That followed a leaked report about the corporation's editorial standards, which covered a range of controversial areas and bias allegations, but specifically criticism about the editing of an episode of Panorama featuring Donald Trump's words during the January the 6th uprising. The BBC chair, Samir Shah, is expected to apologise for errors in that context in a statement to a parliamentary committee today. The Lords is sitting, even if the Commons isn't yet. And then Samir Shah, chair, has quite the job trawl to start for a new DG. It is a blank sheet. Fancy go on that one, Sam?
Fear not, Anne, I am not going to leave you for that. For some unaccountable reason, I have never, ever line managed even a single person in my life. I can't imagine why that is. Look, this is an avowedly domestic political podcast, and although I can hear in the background political arguments around that, I propose that we don't get too far in the weeds. One person I know was just making a bigger point about general institutional instability that we're going through in the UK. So since 2010, we've had 6 prime ministers come and go. They've had an average tenure of 2.5 years in office, 7 chancellors, 5 cabinet secretaries. And here we go, 6 director generals of the BBC, averaging 2.5 years in office, 8 BBC chairs, if you include the 2 temporary ones. And in the last year alone, we've lost a BBC DG, a First Sea Lord, an Archbishop of Canterbury, and a cabinet secretary. Nothing stays still at the moment in Britain, does it?
Very good totalling there. Man, it sounds a bit over-eventful when you put it like that, Sam. So the politics of this BBC succession will surely heat up. I think it is the last thing that Keir Starmer wants. Lisa Nandy, the culture secretary responsible, culture and media, has effectively been tasked with piping down about the BBC when she was reappointed in the reshuffle. You'll remember she went pretty hard at the corporation over the Gaza documentary that went awry, one of the many causa belli behind this slew of resignations. And I gather that Keir Starmer, Sam, was keen that they avoid outright culture wars on the Beeb, thought it was counterproductive, not particularly something that the government should be getting involved in. It's certainly not second-guessing sensitive edits about footage featuring Donald Trump for reasons you can well imagine, given the Anglo-American relationship and what's at stake there. But arm's length will be hard to maintain as soon as you put names in the frame for this job. Expect fireworks, more heated voices, close to Labour, a lot of them saying this was a concerted effort to weaken the BBC from the media and ideological foes. Yeah, well, in part. But then Tim Davie and Deborah Turness, both of whom very highly experienced, tough executives, they could have stood by their record and they chose to walk the plank.
Fascinating stuff. Right, let's turn a corner. The budget is 2 weeks on Wednesday, and key decisions are being made this week. Today, at close of play, the Office for Budget Responsibility transmit their 4th forecast round to Chancellor Rachel Reeves. Now, this is bringing to a close the kind of mulling period, and now they've got to confirm and decide the shape of the budget, because they'll finally know the eventual shape of the black hole. And I think 2 things that I've been saying for a while really, really still hold true. The first, I think, is that the political system is still in the process of getting its head around the impact of this budget. And I don't really think is even yet is fully braced for tax rises on this scale and the kind of blowback that it's gonna receive. And secondly, a couple of weeks ago, we brought you a definition of working people. And I still think that this is the guiding force in this budget about who this government wants to protect. Now, I told you that the definition that ministers had tasked Treasury officials with in some places was to protect the lower 2/3 of earners. And lo and behold, all of the plans that we're hearing about protect people on a salary up to about £50,000 a year above that. And you're going to be pretty exposed in this budget, I think. So watch out, anyone in 50,000 plus. You are not deemed privately, you are not deemed a working person. However, you view your daytime activity and the existence of your PAYE slip or self-employed earnings. And that's what all the leaks suggest.
And continuing her set of pre-budget interviews, the longest runway in history on that one, Rachel Reeves will go on to BBC 5 Live Matt Chorley show at 2:30. Now, last week, he had the new deputy leader, Lucy Powell, with him, warning Reeves not to hike income tax in her budget. Funny old world when the soft left is telling the Chancellor not to hike income tax in the budget for reasons of consistency, but there it is. So now we get the Chancellor's response and a bit of clarity maybe on that. Former number 11 incumbent George Osborne had this to say on the Westminster Hour on Radio 4 last night on whether or not you can break a manifesto pledge around tax. If it's clearly stated in the manifesto or during the election campaign, particularly as the leader, you are going to have hell to pay if you break that promise.
Hell to pay. It feels about the right political landscape after the budget if the leaks are true. The second warning is on the front page of the Times. Aubrey Allegretti reports cabinet ministers and other ministers privately warning Rachel Reeves that increasing income tax in the budget may spell electoral disaster. One minister tells the paper, my concern is that there hasn't been enough consideration for the consequences of breaking the manifesto commitment. And here's the key bit. This could do to us what happened to the Liberal Democrats after the 2015 election, given voters are already extremely despondent with us. Now, political veterans will know that in 2015, the junior partners in the coalition, Liberal Democrats, were completely wiped out at the hands of the Tories because, in part, they broke manifesto promises by going into when they went into coalition with the Tories. And let's get into the specifics of the budget in a moment. But I've been banging on about how perilous a moment this will be, not only for Rachel Reeves but for Keir Starmer too. Do you agree with that?
Unanimously, I do. And I think that point is a really interesting one about the comparison with the Liberal Democrats and the 2015 election. One thing that we do know about Labour is it tends to underestimate the blowback and the ferocity of objections and of trauma around some of the decisions that it's made, whether it's the winter fuel allowance, the miscarried welfare and benefits attempted cut by Reeves, and everything that followed from that. So I do think that is a warning from history. And George Osborne, across the lines, yes, as a former Tory Chancellor, but I think he's also got a good point. You have to have an exceptionally good reason to break a manifesto commitment, particularly perhaps if you're Labour and what you were trying to do in the first place was avoid the accusation. Bookmark it, said Rishi Sunak in the run-up to the election he lost. Bookmark it, Labour will raise your taxes. How do you then get off the hook that the Tories were right all along when they warned about that? And I'm interested too that you're sticking to this analysis that you think this 50k income bracket above that, you're really going to come in for some pain as an earner in the budget. The whole framing of this was around the fiscal rules and the wisdom of the way that Rachel Reeves chose to approach the political economy and Labour's message in the run-up to the election. Her first budget, I think, now pretty much agreed to have quashed the animal spirits in the economy. Other factors, surely, but a lot of them could have been foreseen. So what I'm picking up, Sam, maybe I've been looking in different places over the weekend for comment, is quite a lot of sarkiness, really, about we were promised this chess prodigy whiz who'd worked at the Bank of England who could protect the king on this board, Keir Starmer, only to find out that both the king and queen are now very exposed. Do you think there's any way both of them get to hang on in this scenario?
I'm not going to definitively predict the end of this government after the budget. Nobody knows what's going to happen. It could equally happen after May or equally happen not at all. But because there is a possibility, of course, Westminster has begun to anticipate that. And there is, Anne, some traitor-style plotting going on in Westminster. And it's always actually harder than you think to completely divine what's going on. So I'm going to run through what I've been told, and then I want you to tell me who are the traitors, who are the faithful, and what's really going on.
Oh, right. Gee, thanks for that, Sam Coates. Anne McElvoy's contacts go right out of the window.
So a minister got in touch at the start of the weekend to say, look, they believe that there's some quite substantial plotting going on. They say that there is at least one cabinet minister telling colleagues that Keir Starmer, and I quote, is finished. And they talked me through the kind of conversation. This person doesn't say, whether or not they would be in the frame to take over, but they do think that the Prime Minister is pretty much done for. In addition to that, they say that Number 10 is very aware of this and is warning people to proactively get in touch with Labour MPs to warn that this cabinet minister might make a move after the budget. But as it happens, this cabinet minister absolutely and totally denies that they are up to anything nefarious whatsoever. So it's our job on this podcast to work out what's going on here, Anne. And I actually do think that this is all in the style of the traitors, because I'm not sure that there is hard and fast evidence of plotting. There might be some hints from some quarters, but what seems to me completely logical is that if you're a bit worried in Number 10, you are trying to pitch roll and ward off people who are maybe thinking about the need to position themselves by starting to get out rumours of plots and hoping that the political system turns against them for disloyalty. What do you think, Anne? Do we think that Number 10 doesn't know as much as it's claiming and is so nervous that it's just throwing out names of people that might be plotting, just throw them off course and destabilising them? Or is it just a political fact that, some potential candidates might be, having the odd conversation now because they can smell the way that the wind is blowing? It's just a fact that some candidates might benefit from, potential candidates for leadership might benefit from going long. People like Angela Rayner, who needs to rehabilitate, or the new Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood, who would just benefit from a bit of time. Some candidates like Wes Streeting have thought better earlier. You're having these conversations too, Anne. What's your read of the room?
I think it's a futures market. And when you talk about some candidates, potential candidates going long there, I think you bring that to the front of our minds. If, for instance, you are someone like, say, Wes Streeting, I don't think it would be much of a secret that he'd like to have a go if the ball should come loose at the back of the scrum, etc., etc., etc. Not necessarily that he would provoke that happening. He could pretty much run straight away. He's got a senior cabinet position. He's been behind the scenes of a lot of things that have happened in the government. He has backers. He has people who would like to fund him, etc. So that would maybe work for him pretty soon. But then you have others who, as you point out, would I think not benefit immediately if anything untoward were to happen to Keir Starmer. Just one thought about what you're saying. I have just found covering plotting for even before there was a series called the Traitors. I think I probably started in the court of Henry VIII, covering Thomas Cromwell. But one thing I do find is just imagine me in the little bonnet. One thing I think happens is if there isn't a person who is, if you like, happy to front this up and to let it be known that they feel on balance, that if results are incredibly bad next May in the local elections, they're up for it. The fizzing goes on and it causes damage, but it doesn't actually elevate the chance of the person who might want the job. So that might also fit with your thesis, the Coates hypothesis, that there are reasons to get rumours of this out there. Does the Labour Party, as frustrated as it is with Keir Starmer and certainly with Rachel Reeves right now, does it still have that loyalty gene, unlike the Tories, where we're quite happy to frontally stab leaders and bring on the next one, bring up the bodies, as Hilary Mantel put it in her great novel? Is Labour really like that? Or warts and all, would they take the view, at least until the opposite case was proved in May or beyond, that it's better to stick with Keir Starmer and try to get changes made through him and through Rachel Reeves as Chancellor?
So we're both aligned that even though we might be party to allegations of plotting, you don't necessarily take them at face value, not least because of what you just said, Anne, about loyalty in the Labour Party and the fact that plots can find themselves the subject of unwarranted attention, and just airing publicity about them is unhelpful towards them. There's a bit of a hint that Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves aren't completely always on the same page. And you've been picking up some stuff. We do have a new chief of staff, that's Ben Nunn, for Rachel Reeves. He is very close to Keir Starmer. That was revealed on Friday, that he was staying in the Treasury rather than I'd been hearing, maybe going to number 10. Just tell me a bit about what you're picking up about Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves.
Well, I think that's quite telling in itself. There's a bit of a sense around these appointments. There's always a tug of love around favoured staff, if I can continue the earlier metaphor about the Tudor court. There are people who seem to be in favour with both Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves, but their own relationship is functional, but I don't think it is particularly warm. And here's a story from someone who had watched the meltdown of the welfare bill in July, who told me the following, I think because I had, in the usual insensitive way, referred to something about it in a column and about the perception of Keir Starmer's response or lack of response when Rachel Reeves had that tearful moment in the Commons and was plainly in distress. This person was very keen that I knew and understood that it was not in the sightline of Keir Starmer. He was very focused outwards, talking to the chamber. Of course, we on the cameras were picking up what was going on behind him. But he was aware that it looked bad, it looked insensitive, but fundamentally that he blamed the Reeves team for letting her go into the chamber when she was so upset, said that he had afterwards, realised how bad it was and that he felt for her. But there is that sort of sense of a dislocation, or has been, between the two teams. That may be also what Ben Nunn's job is there to resolve. But he was also, to be frank, somewhat thin-skinned, according to my person on the inside in the know at that point. He's thin-skinned about the way that it reflected on him. It doesn't sound like they were all around in a group hug trying to make it all work immediately, get it back into balance straight away. There was a lot of tension.
Wow. That's actually quite an insight, that at Rachel Reeves' most vulnerable moment, Keir Starmer wasn't necessarily there, standing full square, shoulder to shoulder, but there was blame to be apportioned. Right, the alarm's gone off. We are going to have to blame that on you for a brilliant story that took us over time. But
it's just your way of saying long-winded.
Never. However, we will wrap it up there, and we will see you tomorrow for Politics at Sam and Anne's on Tuesday morning. Look forward to it then.
Zipping it, Sam. Zipping it.